All right, shalom, everybody. Welcome. Come on in. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight. He is our strength and our redeemer. And it's in his name, which is his authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, protect, and protect tonight's message. Amen. Welcome. Hello, everybody. I'm Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. We appreciate you. Thanks for coming on with us and spending some time with us today. And today we are continuing to go on this journey, on this mental journey. Today, we want to talk about I am back. I am back. We give all praise and honor to the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. We give all praise and honor to him for my wife, the Honorable Mai, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And we thank everybody for being on today. To the moderators, ministerial staff, SOC. If you agree with us, disagree. If it's your first time, one time, many, we appreciate your presence. Thanks for coming on with us. How you doing, Sister Kendra? How we doing, Sister Deborah, Leon? Uh-oh. How you doing, Big Brother Thomas? And today we want to talk about, how people always say, go back to Africa, or if you don't like it here, you can go back to where you came from, which is always interesting because we were here anyways. But I just started, thinking to myself, I am back. I am back. How do I go back to something that I'm already back in? Because I started the journey in my mind first before I wanted to make sure that I realized who I was, check up my family, go back, learn my language, learn the institutions that were there, learn what was there pre, uh, Khazar talk and stuff like that we talked about even today on Patreon and stuff, you know, or you couldn't comment. Sorry about that. I don't know. It might have been a thing on the phone. Matter of fact, actually, while we're doing that, give me 1 second so I can make sure that people can go back and listen to it. Hold on 1 second, because I just realized that when I do that on the phone, sometimes YouTube tries to make it private. Okay, cool. So everybody can go look at it. All right, awesome. But yeah, as I was going through the stuff as we were going through the day and talking and stuff, I am back. The journey starts in the mind. Sorry about that. I'm back. I had to check on something real quick. But the journey starts in the mind. I don't know why it won't. Just trying to. There we go. The journey back, it starts in the mind. It starts with the language. It starts with the culture, right? It starts with a culture. It starts with a mindset that we should have, right? And people don't want you to go back to the mindset, but the journey started in the mind. The journey to take us away from being ourselves, it started in the mind. A lot of people don't know that. The journey that caused you to not think about yourself correctly, it started in the mind, right? So if it started in the mind of me coming away from myself, the first step back on the journey is to go back to who I am and how I think, how I live, how I talk, how I dress, how I address others based off of our cultural perspective instead of colonial perspective. So somebody says, go back to Africa. It's like, I've been back. Even if you haven't been able to be blessed enough yet to go back, to where you are on that end, or even if you haven't been blessed enough, I've been blessed enough to go back to Cherokee land and to see Khalifa land and to see, Wampanoag land and to see you see Gullah Geechee and all these different things, like, even if you haven't been back physically as of yet, even if you're not wearing the things physically as of yet, even if you're not using your own hair as of yet, even if you're not doing those things, even if you're not doing businesses that support your community as of yet, you can go back in the mind. And this is something that's really detrimental to their system. This is why they speak so poorly of us, because whenever you represent yourself, you represent where you came from or who you came from. Remember, it's not as important. How you doing, Sister Mary? Remember, it's not more important to know where you came from than to know who you came from. See, so they want you to think, oh, you were born in H Town, so you go H Town, H Town. I'm from the D. I'm from the 404. ATL. I'm from the DMV. You know, we're not from Baltimore. We from Baltimore, right? NYC. I'm from the five boroughs. Brooklyn in the house. All these things. They want you to identify with where rather than who. Because if we deal with who, then I have to say, well, I'm Ashanti, I'm Shui, I'm Igbo, right? I have to say I'm Kush, I'm Nubia, I am Kemet, I'm Yashda, right? Now that's when they have a problem with you because you can say where I not just where I'm from, but who I'm from. Because who I'm from, no matter where you move me, you can't remove who I am from me. And that's what they did. When you remove who you are from the thing, then it's always go back to a physical location. But what if my location is something you can't take? How you doing, hidden? Right? Yeah, we were all those things, right? So if you can't take away who I am, then you have a hard time moving me. We sing these songs, we shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water, right? We shall not be moved. Well, guess what? You shouldn't be moved from who you are. Once you understand who you are, you stand under the principles of your culture, right? The red, the black, and the green is who you are, not where you are. Marcus Garvey wasn't sitting there only talking about these places in Africa, talking about Moors, Moroccans, Sierra Leone, what we now call Jamaica, the Arawak, the Taino, if you want to go to lumping a bunch of tribes together and say the Incas, the Aztecs, etc., right? Phoenicians, Punic Wars, Carthaginians. He wasn't talking about a location. He's talking about who you are. When you know who you're from, you know what the throne is. The throne doesn't seat a person. See, wherever the king, see, this is stuff they don't teach us. This is why we need to learn monarchy and things that we even teach in class and stuff. Like, or at least we should be having these things taught in our regular classes. They don't. It's always interesting. People say we are from the kingdom of heaven, but you don't know how a kingdom works. Wherever a queen or a king sits, that's where the country is. The country is wherever the person who is the king or queen sits. So that's why you don't really see kings or queens leave for that long. The Pope doesn't really go and live somewhere else for 5, 6 years, 10 years, 20 years. He's got to mostly stay at the Vatican. Why? Because if he leaves there, he leaves the throne, right? Queen Elizabeth, even though she visited Ghana, while Ghana supposedly belonged under her throne and all that, she wasn't going to stay there. Even though Prince William went into many different nations where people had color and stuff, and they carried him around on thrones and stuff because they still thought of him as being their king. He couldn't stay there that long. Why? Because you can't leave the throne. If you leave the throne, you're there. You said, I'm not Olmec. We still gave them, and they speak Spanish. I mean, so you're saying because they speak a different language, I can't be them? Number one, you have to realize that I have in my family Puerto Ricano, that's Taino blood, right? I have Arawak, or what you might call even Jamaican, which actually seeps into Haiti, which actually seeps into Cubano. I have John horse and stuff in my family that goes even to people that are mixed in with Mexican blood as well, and things like that. So even if you just want to talk about people that are married in, you can't necessarily leave me out of that. Number two, if we're talking about the Olmec She, not only did they have people that were indigenous to the Americas, but you also have people that were indigenous over to the continent of Africa who came over and were mixing and matching many years before we even knew of such thing of people coming together and calling it Spain, let alone somebody called Spanish. And lastly, just because somebody speaks a language doesn't mean that's who they are. You said you haven't seen them, they're not black, they're native. Okay. Well, when the Aztecs made pictures of themselves, matter of fact, let's do it like this. You want to see some pictures of some natives from the same area you're talking about and how they were drawn by the people who came and brutalized them and took their land? Let's see what they said they look like. I still have some of those pictures up, I believe. Hopefully I do. If not, then I might have to go away and come back real quick. Yep, still have some pictures. You ready? Here's what the people who took over them said they look like. You ready? They said they look like that. That's what they drew them as. I'm not saying that there can't be many different colors, but let's not act like none of them had any color to them. That's being intellectually dishonest. And by the way, we could look at how the people themselves drew themselves. They drew themselves having color. Now, sometimes they drew themselves having multiple colors, sure, but let's not act like there were no dark skinned people who were in the sun all day. And let's not act like that they didn't go through a lot of decolorization, if you will, when our people were brutalized and forced to lay down with people, and you had to drop certain amounts of white blood into people to be able to make them worthy of certain positions that they have to have. So once again, I'm not worried about where somebody's located now. You said they don't look African. What does an African look like? Which African? You think all Africans look the same? You think there's no Africans with blonde hair and blue eyes? right? You think there were no natives that came in different colors? You're telling me that somebody who's presently in a place, who's been colonized, brutalized, and mixed with people, yes, mixed with people. Now, not all of them, once again, have to be extremely dark skinned. You said you hang out with Hispanics and call them native. Okay, where? Which country? Are we talking about all natives? By the way, I just was hanging out with people who were from not Guatemala, further down. Where were they from? We were when we were down and we went to visit some of our contingency that are down in Miami, or well, they're down in South Florida. We converged upon Miami, and we even did a baptism and stuff down there. And when we went there, we met a sister, and the sister is somebody that, if you're not careful, in modern society today, you would think she was either very light skinned Hispanic, or you would just call her white. And she was very quick to be like, "I am black." El Salvador, yeah. By the way, in Dominican, like Dominicano, for example, the Dominicano versus the Haitian is something where there are a lot of Dominicans that don't want to be associated with black whatsoever, but they're the same people as the Haitians, you know? So to act, to act like there was no colorism that happened over there, and there's not colorism that still is there. But yeah, just because somebody's native doesn't mean they have to be extremely dark skinned, right? That's not what I'm saying, right? My son is of lighter skin than I, doesn't mean he's not my son. And by the way, even scientifically, if you measure melanin, you're supposed to measure melanin from the inside out, not the outside in. So there's a lot, So I'm not. So we have to be careful, even with that. But I get what you're saying, And once again, I'm not here to tell you that there can't be a native or you can't be black. Like, I don't want colorism to enter into our mindset. So I'm not here to tell you that just because somebody's darker skinned than somebody else, they're better, or that they're more deserving of something. That's getting into blood quantum and stuff. We need to leave blood quantum stuff alone. That has nothing to do with us either. It's like if you go over to Africa, you better be careful, because there's some people over there that are scared of you if you come out, lacking pigmentation, and they even kill people and do all heinous stuff. That's not cool either. We need to drop that. We need to drop that. You said Dominicans are not the same? Do you not know the story of Haiti? Do you not know that all of what was Haiti and Dominican, they were all known as Hispaniola? You know that, right? The French at one point came and they tried to conquer all that before Spain got in there and before England tried to come over and fight. And you know that the whole island participated in fighting for freedom. And a lot of Haitians went over there to regroup to be able to come back over. So they went to the Dominican side, even though it wasn't as big as what you might think it was back then. But they went to the Dominican side, regrouped, and then came back sometimes too. But because of colorism and the Spanish in Spain, and Spain was really into separation. See, because the French, they had everybody living together, but depending on how much blood you had was where you fell into, right? So you had like at least 40 shades of blood, going from Garçon um, and I'm sorry, Blanc Garçon, and I'm sorry, Garçon, Blanc, no, yeah, and Petit Blanc, right? Or another word, the big whites and the little whites, right? They separated like that all the way down to the darkest of skin. And on the other side, they really couldn't mess with people. That was before Spain even came over. And when Haiti got freedom, they fought off not only the French, but then they fought off the English and the Spanish, right? A lot of people forget that. And then they got caught up again, had to pay reparations because they broke the system that caused the Louisiana Purchase and all that stuff, causing France and Napoleon and all these people to fall into a free fall. And then eventually they had to pay reparations, paid the reparations back, and then the CIA came and helped the French, and then the CIA straight up took over, and then they put Papa Doc and Baby Doc in order. And while they were doing that, they were letting the Spanish side of things, the white side of things, go ahead and go, because America was okay with the Spanish side. And so the Dominican side now acts differently than the Haitian side, but they're the same people, right? Like we know what time it is. They are the same people. But hey, shalom to everybody coming on. How you doing, Sister Carrie? You said Hispaniola leans Little Spain. The entire island was called. Okay, it was called that originally. Yes, I'm talking about when the conquistadors, or the conquerors, or the people who use the doctrine of discovery that was set up by the papacy. When they came over, they allowed it to be called that. Right? They gave permission to the Spanish in 1491 to go over. In 1492, Spanish gave permission to Christopher Columbus to come over and make slaves out of people that said they had the same guanine weapons and were mixing and matching with people that were already from West Africa before they came. And Christopher Columbus, who was sailing with people, at least as far back as 1482, we have evidence, who were African. That's how he learned how to come over. Right? Hey, Shalom, how you doing? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. And then we trying to get that mindset out. Right, we had his mindset that it's like, oh no, well, because they're light skinned, or because they speak a language. I mean, a lot of people came out speaking English. Does that mean that's where your people came from? Did your people were your people Anglo? Those of us who are having this conversation, so we have to see how messed up it is. But that's why we said, when somebody says go back to Africa, or go back to where it is, or stop taking this, or stop appropriating, you got to say, I'm already back. I'm back in my mind. I'm back in the mind. You said your people selling them to Columbus. My people selling them to Columbus. Okay, is that what happened? And even if you want to talk about my people, once again, like, I'm many different people. So you're talking about my Taino brethren. You're talking about my Adawak brethren. You're talking about my Olmec Sheep brethren. You're talking about my Tisalagi brethren. That's not even over from Africa. And those are, and my people that are African weren't the people that Columbus sailed with anyways, to learn them to sail. So you still got to get it together. See what I'm saying? But you're so busy on trying to keep up the colorism thing, try to keep up the racism thing. I'm beyond that. I've gone back to a place that before somebody even thought that white was a color. You know that white's not even a color, right? Before somebody tried to tell you that there was such thing as white, and therefore something that was whiter was different, which is always nonsensical. So my people, all of them, okay, whatever. We're going to a place of ad hominem. Ad hominem doesn't show you have any apologetic skills. It just shows you can make fun of others, right? But I'm trying to live on a level higher than that, right? And I'm sorry, when the moderators mute you because of all the lies and stuff and people just did on the other channel, we got to be very careful with you guys. So thank you for being on, but we're just gonna have to let you go, right? But at least for a little bit, y'all getting out of control a little bit with lies. But these are things that are there, and we're literally telling truths. So about even when we look at the map of Negro land and Guinea, if you look on the map, right, and you look at where the slave coast is, and this is a map that was not made up by a black person, by the way, and this is a map, as we were talking about earlier, for those who were on Patreon. I'm part of Patreon fam, Patreon Kingdom, and thank y'all for being on again, back to back. We were just discussing how, if you look at the map, you see right on the map, it tells you that there's a place where it says that the Jews are from. 1700s, that map was made. So what are we now? 1800s, 1900s, 2000s? You're talking about 300 years ago. I know people want to act like that was a long time ago. Really not that long in the grand scheme of things. Right? Where were we at? Who were we? We were known as the Jews. In a place called Negro land. They called it Negro land because Negro, or Negro, before there was even a place called Spain. Remember, Carthaginians and later the Moors, for thousands of years, would be over what you now call Spain today, which is why Spanish people don't like black people that much over in Spain. Even the ones in Morocco who were trying to escape with the Moroccans, the Eurocentric Moroccans who are over there right now, were doing to cause them to try and go into Spain, literally going across the land because the land is connected still. They tried to go over there, and what did they do? They started killing them and beating them with clubs, beating them to death. Don't like them now, but they were under that rule. They were under that authority. They don't like to admit that. They don't like to admit that even when they, dress up in blackface and they do the whole Moors thing or whatever, because Moors built their stuff. Moors built those buildings. You think that the Spanish buildings that you guys think are so well made, you think that it was Spanish people who made those? You see, you don't want to give love to the Carthaginian. You don't want to give love to the Moor. You don't want to give love to the Moroccan. You don't want to give love to to the Phoenician, the Punic War, the Punic War, Phoenician, connected to Canaan, connected to Israel, connected to Kemet, connected to Cush, connected to Hittite. And if we keep going deeper, I mean, shoot, you got to start talking about Bantu, right? It's right there. They called it Negro land. It was the Eurocentric powers, the people who were enslaving over here while they were slave trading over in the Americas. And they said, these are Negroes over here. Negro is an ancient term, one of the most ancient terms for West African that Africans had. They learned that term from the African. You hear black and you think that black or Negro was bad. Well, black or Negro was bad in Western civilization because you got to admit that you were under them at some point and you had to learn from them. Yeah, do some travel. Go to England, go to Spain, go to Ireland, go to Scotland. Scotland would surprise you, right? But go to Scotland, go to Wales, go to all these places you're talking about, go to France. Look at some of these ancient castles that have Moors as pictures on the flags. Where do you think those pictures came from? You think those were just random? You think that they just wanted to make themselves look darker? It's the people that built the civilization. And hey, babe, how you doing? My wife, the Honorable Mind's on. Check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A and D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And how you doing, Trauma Shaman? How you doing, King? Right? Like, you guys think those are just random occurrences that these flags are up here with all these black folk on them? You know? Have you ever looked up the Roman Emperor Septimius Severus, an African emperor? Do you know that England and a lot of the things that you even know, even as far as the sewer systems and some of the aqueducts and all that stuff that you guys talk about in England and some of those other countries and stuff, they're not Roman, meaning that white people built them, because Romans weren't necessarily by the colonial construct known as white either. Yeah, you had the coat of arms and stuff, so you know exactly where I'm talking about. You know exactly where I'm going, Bishop. Right? Look at those things. Have you ever looked them up and seen Septimius Severus? If you don't know who I'm talking about, look him up. Septimius, last name Severus, or surname Severus, I guess. Severius, or US, something like that at the end. But look up Septimius Severus, right? A black Roman, African Roman emperor who's responsible for a bunch of stuff that's in England till this day that people don't even know he built. Might have even been called, yes, exactly, swarthy, which is another name that they use for Jews or Israel all over the place. They were swarthy. They say that they were swarthy. Even Jews who say are Jews now, who had Hebrew slaves, they said that those Hebrew slaves, they were swarthy and had hair like wool. We gotta ask ourselves, why is it that everybody else see the burden of proof? Another lawful and also apologetic term. The burden of proof is not on us; it's on those that came before us. Why don't we just listen to what those who came before us, the people that you keep saying that I'm appropriating their culture? Why don't you ask them? Listen to what they described. Amen. Thank you, Minister Tamara. Yep, it's spelled right in the chat. Septimius Severus. Give what up? It's interesting you call yourself my brother and you say I'm your brother, and we might be. Brothers don't have to agree, but it's interesting that you don't say hello to your brother, you don't say how you doing, you don't try to figure out where I'm talking about, what I'm coming from, what I'm saying. Because even like when some people say give it up, it's interesting, like, because that's the way of just, once again, ad hominem, you don't know what you're talking about, give it up, this and that, it doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. But this map that I'm talking about with Negro land, you could literally look it up at the Library of Congress, as we were talking about on Patreon earlier. You can literally look this up in the Library of Congress. Library of Congress keeps this map and says that they're keeping it because it's something in history that should be upkept. It's something in history that we should upkeep, and yet people are like, no, give it up, give it up. The United States Corporation won't give it up. They say it's theirs. They want to keep it, but they won't teach it to you. My wife, hey, how you doing, baby? Said we are the originators, contributed so much to civilization, whether we intended to or not. And so the white Anglo-Saxons are the third wave of Europeans after a fifth, the Danites, and now Edomites. Yeah, no. I mean, we can tell where people went if you just look up Genesis 5, Genesis 10. We already know where people went. We know where Japheth went, if that's where we're going. I'm not really focused on that right now, but that's part of it. And so there's a lot of stuff that was already set up. And even once again, we got to get out of this idea that like Edomite has to mean white. Ready doesn't necessarily mean white, right? Like some places, the way I look could be considered to be ready. There are African tribes who rub red on all over their bodies, they're considered to be ready. You said, but just think about it. Um, is we made us slaves, but our skin became slaves. Then it didn't matter where we came from. Exactly. See, and so it doesn't matter where you come from, it matters who you come from. Exactly. You said we created it all, and then they took it from us. We were African, Hebrew, Greek, Roman, Asian, Native, etc. Right? And that's something that really, like, we're trying to get people to get to. The more we find out about who we are, the more oneness there is. But people want to separate it to be able to say you're less than. Why can't we be one under color? Why is it that it was okay to make sure we won? Nobody was upset for years and years and years when they were having picnics where they would pick an N-word and be able to hang him and stuff, and people would smile and they would hold him up like they were holding up a trout that they found or something. They would literally bargain for pieces of the body that would be burned up, and they would put it on the mantelpiece so that when they were having cozy fires and sitting there as a family, they could look up and remember, man, you remember when we were at that lynching? White Jesus was proper for everybody to come underneath. Now we talk about Yashua, we say everybody should come together under that banner under peace. And now everybody's saying give it up. It's weird. It's just odd. To love yourself has become something that opposition is weaponized. Isn't that wild? To love yourself, to love thyself has become weaponized. It's 300,000 years of modern human walking this earth, and for most of it, we were black. Yeah, or definitely somebody of color if you don't want to use the colonial construct. I don't even like the whole person of color thing because technically there's no such thing as a white person. There's really no such person that has no kind of color in their body whatsoever. It's gonna be very rare you're gonna find anybody who can you can look at it and say like, oh, you look white. And guess what? Most of those people are not by the social under the colonial construct white. Most of them have an issue where they just can't, produce melanin. you know so you could be African and be white by whatever definition you're trying to say, but still, if I can see you, if you ain't see-through, if you're not just bright walking around, then guess what, like, technically you still ain't white, because white, there is no such thing as the color white. For somebody to believe they're a white person, they have to believe what? A colonial construct, which is a miseducation based off of a fever-pitched ideology to ensure that we are trying our best to dissociate ourselves from what is real. And how you doing, Sir Stephen? Right? We don't want to be honest about the fact that before somebody told you there was a such thing as white, before you believed that there needed to be a colonial construct based off of color, before you got into the Greeks who were trying to tell you that you had to have blonde hair and blue eyes to be part of the royal family so that you can go ahead and be royalty, before you believed what Hitler said, right? Before you got into um, even Idi Amin and some of his ideology as well, if you know about the African side of things, before you got into colorism, before you got into, hey, are we going to join the Confederacy or not? And if we're a native group that joins the Confederacy, we got to have slaves too. Before you got into all these different things that were taught over and over again, before it became Blackimento down in Brazil, before Australians literally had breeding programs where they bred out the black of them, before you had similar things that happened in Canada, right, where they literally bred out the black and also, killed off a bunch of natives and took the children and forced them to go into schools, had them crying, were mismanaging the children, molesting them, doing things like that. Before you got into all those things, we were one. And I'm trying to say, why not go back to being one? And how you doing, Vivan? I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it right. Wrong, excuse me. Right? Like, why is it that we can't go back to being together, going back to being one? Why is it that oneness is in inopportune? Why when is it ever an inopportune time to come together? I guess only if your goal is to make sure that we're always apart. You see, oneness should never be. There should never be an inopportune time to come together. And these are things that people created to separate you, because before there was such a thing as Negro land and Guinea, and before there was Ghana and Sierra Leone and the Republic of Congo and South Africa. South Africa, I'm forgetting what the name is. South Africa actually used to literally mean like like Yah's our father. Or before people stopped forgetting that, like in Central Africa, people had no problem, especially with Bantu people as well. But in Central Africa, people had no problem talking about Abiyah or Yah Abi, Abba, Father, Yah. things like that. Nobody had any problem with it. We were one. People forget in China. People think that Chinese always had they have this mystical thing where they tell you like these stories, these Hollywood stories, or their version of Hollywood, to where they worship the god of money and wealth and gold, and they had the god of this, and they had the, Japanese talking about they had the what do you call the sexual deities and spirits they had that try to take your sexual energy or whatever and feed off it. I can't remember the name of it, but all these different things. We forget that before in China. Let me stay with China for a second. In China, they believed in Shem, Ham, and Japheth. They believed in Noah. They believed in Yehovah. They called, instead of Elohim, they called him Shangdi. Shangdi was the one being. They have temples still to this day that you can go and visit, to where they still have three different places. They have an inner court, they have an outer court. They still have in some of their modern Chinese characters, let alone if you learn the ancient Chinese characters. Now, I'm not a huge pictograph, Chinese pictograph expert. However, if you look at some of their ancient pictographs, you'll discover you can't even say stuff like, for them family. If you're going to write family, you have to put three pictographs together. You got to put 8 people. You have to put the number 8. You have to put boat, and you have to put water together, and that's how you get family. Why do they do that? Because they believe in 8 people who were on a boat and some water during the flood. Like, it's not even that hard once you know culturally what's going on, how to bring everybody together under one banner, because everybody believed in the same creator. How you doing, brother TJ? And if everybody believed in the same creator, then it means that everybody was okay with being one. The further we've lived, the more separation people have had, the more wickedness has come on people's hearts, the more people want to say that they're better than the other. And so now we go further and further and further away. But when you talk about people came from the east to be able to see Yahshua, where do you think they came from? You don't even want to recognize that. That means they probably could have came from China. They could have came from India. They could have came from a lot of places. Y'all call it Pangea, but the earth was considered to be all one together, even back in ancient times in the Bible and ancient times according to science. And they say it all was together. And look at where those places used to be lined up when you put the puzzle pieces back together. When it was Pangea, or when it was one nation before Peleg, the son of Eber or Ibra or Hebrew, where we get Avda from, the Avda people, the Ifrit people from, which is what Igbo people were initially known as and still are known as in a few tribes today. When you put them together, you'll discover that you were talking about people who were all one. India was part of Africa at one point. Babylon, and what you call Babylon, all these places, they would have been part of Africa. So all these places that you keep talking about, well, how could the Garden of Eden been here, and how can the rivers mix and match and all this when they're all in different places? They weren't in different places. We're trying to get back to a place where we're all one. So once again, when somebody tells me go back to Africa, or somebody says you need to leave here or go back, or you need to go back to college, I am back to my original self. I know thyself, right? You want to do what, say people who worship the Satan say, do as thou wilt. We want to do as our people did. We want to become one, right? The truth is, getting back to the truth. The truth is the truth. People try to come together under lies, but once again, we realize truth separates. See, it's kind of a double-edged sword. If I tell you the truth, I'm trying to get you to become one, but a lot of people are so hard in their hearts, they're going to use it as a reason to try and separate, because they don't want to live by it. Yeah, hallelujah, right? Back to our original self, right? Even the word salvation, for those of you who believe in such terms, guess what the word salvation actually means? The word salvation, it actually means to be salvaged. Salvation, therefore, means that I have to go back to something that was its original intent. That's why we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against origin, against kingdom origins, against original intent. You could basically even read that scripture as we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against salvation. We're trying to salvage ourselves, and we're wrestling not against flesh and blood, but we're wrestling about the fact that we are not together. Remember, even the word remember doesn't mean to recall, it means to remember. Remember means that I was once a member of something, I was dismembered, cut off, and now I'm being remembered, pieced back together. Interesting. Even in the words that we use, we realize that the need to become one with the truth. How do you become free? Everybody says, get your guns, get your land, make sure this, beat anybody down, cuss folk out, make sure you get black men in control, make sure you get black women in control. How do you get things back together? Salvage yourself. You said you scream back, you're the visitor. I'm standing in my ancestral footsteps. Amen. You can say that too. Right. It comes to a place, it comes to a point though, right? And see, I'm not yelling. I'm not saying anything bad at you. I'm just saying in general, right? People get mad and they say all this false stuff about us. Look, I haven't cussed anybody out. I haven't fussed anybody out. I haven't denied anybody a right to be able to speak. I haven't said that you don't have a right to have an opinion. I haven't said that you can keep on mismanaging the truth. You can do whatever you want with the truth. It's your choice. But just remember, for every choice comes an invoice. Yeah, because we fought a lot in the end. We gotta have that balance, right? So like we're not willing to admit these things. But see, the further back we go, the more one we become. I don't care if you believe in evolution or you believe in what I believe in or you believe in some variance of it. At the end of the day, if we all come from the same thing, you got to start asking yourself, what was the origin of things? When we were together, what did we do? When you were kings, because you still are kings, but we keep saying when we were. But let's just go back, since a lot of us don't even think of ourselves as kings. When you were kings, did you withhold wealth from people or did you give wealth to the people? Do you even know that Mansa Musa, do you know that that is simply a word that means Moshe or Moses? Did you know that? When you talk about Mansa Musa, the Emperor Musa, whatever title you want to put on Mansa is really his monarch, is really his title. Mansa Musa was Mansa Moses. Did you know that? Were you aware of that? Yes, I know. Somebody said, but he was a Muslim, this and that. Yes. Ishmael is Isaac's brother. Mansa Musa was Mansa Moses. Harriet Tubman, we called her what? We called her Black Moses. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., what did they call him? They called him Moses. Come on, y'all. Toussaint Louverture, when he decided to go ahead and take up the leadership of what was happening with Haiti, what did they call him? They called him Moses. He said he read about Moses, and he said because once again you had the slave Bible. When he actually read the Bible, he read about Moses. He said he identified with Moses and said he should do the same thing for his people. This thing brought us together as one. Why do we keep going away from what's bringing us together? Mind blown. Yeah, like what are we? What? Why are we going away from what keeps us together? Why are we in such a fight? We've never had a problem with identifying with these people, identifying with ourselves. You said, what am I preaching exactly, though? I'm preaching exactly what I'm preaching, which is that when somebody says, go back to Africa or go back to or something like that, go back to where you come from, I say, I'm already back. Now, I've physically been back to these places, sure, but I'm talking about like I'm spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and culturally back, attached, psychologically attached to who I am. And we're trying to get to a place to where when we find out who we are, it's easy to look at somebody else eye to eye. Have you even noticed some of y'all grew up with this complex? I'll admit I had a little bit of this. I don't know if it's based off of black or white, but it's something that I dealt with as far as being better and being greater as a human being and having more confidence in self. But there's a lot of black people who grew up, you know, um, where they couldn't even look white people in the eye because they didn't think of themselves as being enough, right? But if you know about yourself, you can look somebody in the eye, have forgiveness, have love, treat them correctly, have values and stuff like that. But I'm be honest with you, as a culture, I don't think we're prepared to look people in the eye. If Cardi B is going to be the best representation we got to look at ourselves over again. See, I'm not looking for the person who's trying their best to like egg me on or trying to get something to, get me to step in something or whatever. I'm just trying to tell you, like, I'm not looking for any kind of reparation. I'm looking for inward reparation. I'm not looking for anybody else to tell me what my land is. Land ownership is what I do. I'm not looking for somebody else to tell me I have to be governed by their 9 to 5 and their suit and tie and all these different things. I wear what my people wear. And I'm comfortable and I'm confident and I'm consistent and I'm competent in that which I speak. Right? I'm bigger than a Democrat. I'm bigger than a Republican. I'm bigger than right. I'm bigger than left. I don't care about even being right. I want to be righteous. Righteous means I got to be in right lawful standing. So as I become myself and as I raise my child and to become themselves, and to be free within the confines of self, then they have no problem meeting up with somebody else and looking them eye to eye and saying, yes, now we can actually have what you would call equal footing. I don't really believe in equality because there's no two people that have ever been exactly the same. But y'all get what I'm trying to say, right? We have a problem to where we can't look at other people there. How do you look at another nation and you don't have a nation? I say this all the time. How do you look at somebody else and say, hey, um, we have our city, the black community. And it's like, well, do you own your gas station? Do you grow your own food? Right? Do you sell your own vehicles? Do you have your own land? Do you teach your own story? See, I don't want, like, I'm not saying CRT is evil or anything, but I don't really care about CRT. Like, we do homeschool and stuff anyway, but I don't really care about CRT because CRT is something that you're begging somebody else to teach within their system. Why would somebody else teach you as they would teach themselves? I'm not even mad at that. Like, they're going to tell you George Washington is the first president. Why would they tell you that George Washington is the ninth president? If their stuff is based off of George Washington has to be first, that's their father. He's the father of their nation, right? Elvis is the king of rock and roll. Doesn't matter if he stole from other people, that he actually literally got the sound and stuff, and they even paid a bunch of people to do his stuff for them. That's their king, right? The Beatles don't care about Elvis. They cared about Chuck Berry. And if the Beatles sold more than Elvis, why wouldn't I listen to the Beatles and say, hey, maybe I should listen to the originator? I'm just saying, like, if they have their stuff they're supposed to pull up, they're supposed to bring that stuff up. That's their culture. That's who they are. They say be about money, which is fake and it has no gold standard behind it or whatever, but hey, keep using it because it makes America great. All right, cool. Like, if you want to use something that's not real, go ahead, but it's not real currency. Oh yeah, muddy water for sure. Now, ain't that a man, right? Somebody would look at his stuff and say, ooh, this not but muddy water is important. I have no problem listening to Yebba. Yebba can sing. Yebba can sing. For real, for real. Got no problem with Yebba, right? But Yebba can't hit Patti LaBelle stuff. Yebba's not gonna be able to do what Billie Holiday did. If you don't like Billie Holiday, Sarah Vaughan, that's not the originator of that. It's just not. So you got to ask yourself, like, once again, what's wrong with me going back to who I am? Somebody says, go back to where you came from. I am back. I went back first in the spirit. I went back first in my mind. I went back first in my psychology. I went back first in my etymology. I went back first in in even my theology. Even when it comes to mysticism or mythology, guess what? I have a right to look at my mythology as well. Why is it that we should only pay attention to Zeus or to Apollos? But we can't pay attention to, if we wanted to, why can't I study Ra as well? Why can't I study Osiris? Why can't I study Isis? Why can't I study Heru? Why can't I study noon? I mean, heck, we say noonday every day when the sun gets above us. Why shouldn't I know where that comes from? I'm not saying I even worship these netchers. They would call them gods because they are about Germanic language and Germanic deities, but they didn't have gods. They had netchers. Why would I not comprehend the difference between the two? Why wouldn't I comprehend that when I say Gianyame in Kiswahili, the number one language in Africa, especially the number one business language, if you won't give it the number one language in all of Africa, Gianyame. Gianyame means what? There is none except, meaning there's none except the Most High, right? Which means that at the end of the day, you got to break it down to, I don't care how much pantheism you try to use, you got to break it down to monotheism at some point. I'm sorry, you said we don't have the manual for our body, mind, spirit connection. Yeah. And we even do. We just don't pay attention to it. We definitely don't open it up as far as culture. We don't have the community, right? Because that's what we got to build. And yeah, money isn't even real. There's no gold standard. You talking about cryptocurrency, but you use debit cards and credit cards. Nobody puts money in your hand. Nobody even writes checks anymore. And you're using your social security card to be able to get stuff. You're using your social security card to get the job, to get the bank account. And technically it's illegal for you to use your social security card as any form of identification. You only do that because the IRS wants you to believe you're supposed to pay taxes. How you doing, Positive? So we're told our whole life that the Bible's been changed. Soon as we hear the truth and we share it, now we're wrong. Yeah. And people do that all the time. That's a great point. all the time. You know, the Bible's changed. The Bible's written by man. The Bible's this, the Bible's that. The Bible doesn't make any sense. And then we start realizing, okay, this is the changes they made. And here's where they did this. And this letter didn't even exist. And this is what this word actually means. You know, before Genesis, it was by the shots. And before firmament, it was Hakwai. And before Lord God, it was Yahweh Elohim. And before Trinity, it was Aleph Lamed Mem. And before, right, and here's the characters, Aleph, Bet, you know, Gemal, Dalet, Chay, Vav, Zion, etc., all the way to Tav. So he's not the Alpha and the Omega because people who spoke Greek didn't write the Bible out anyways. He was the Aleph at Tav. But people don't even want to talk about. When we learn those things, we say, well, here's the correction. Here's what's up. Here's proper. Here's what it was initially. Here's what it was originally, etc. They told us it was wrong. Then when we said, we agree with you, it is wrong. And we know who the people are. Yeah, like my wife's saying, it's our story, literally our story. And when we start telling our story, now you're wrong. Interestingly enough, though, when you had an overseer, you think overseer is a position of, you know, that you need to be before you become bishop. But overseer was the overseers that were over slaves who would listen to the services that we would give. You would have a Sambo spirit that would be up as the pastor. And then after that, the overseer sat in the big chair. He represented the slave master. Master means teacher. Slave owner is different than slave master. And so what the master was teaching, he had to make sure that the slaves were teaching each other through the Bible. And they literally made slave Bibles where they removed Exodus and a bunch of different things to treat people who were slaves with respect. So when you tell me to go back, I am back, right? I'm focused more than I ever have been. And here's the deal. You guys hear this and you guys think hate because that's the culture from which, you know, this Western society was built upon. But see, the more focused I am, the more loving I am. The more focused I am on me, the more respectful I've become. The more I've learned about myself, the more I've grown into a person that uses confidence and competence. The more I've grown, I've stopped worrying about having to work under somebody else and make sure that I'm in my work rather than have a job and toil for the rest of my life. The more I've learned about myself, the more importance there is to make sure that I have free time where even if I don't see my family for a whole day, all of a sudden the time that I had that was free, if they need me for 15 minutes, we could be a family for 15 minutes. Before I had to work two and a half jobs. The more I learn about myself, the more I learn about personal growth. The more I learn about myself, the more I want to have my hand in the dirt. The more I have my hand in the dirt, the more seeds I sow. The more seeds I grow, the more food I create. The more food I create, the better it tastes. The better it tastes, I say I want some land to have that I can grow it on. The when I have the land, the more of a private citizen I become. There shouldn't be any problem with you, especially if you believe in big government. Big government says that they want to get away from being public and being more private anyways. You should support me in my endeavor so that I can be the example you can use to say, even people that don't hold my belief system believe in the same thing I believe in to the core. That's being one. That's being united, is it not? But for some reason, we can't get that to happen. We don't even look at it as something that should happen. We don't even think about it as something that should happen. I wonder why. Is it because I don't want to be one, or is it because you don't want to be one? You say you want to be equal. There's no such thing as equal. Support me in who I am, and I'll support you in who you are. Even when they try to tell you energy equals mass or mass equals energy, right? Mass and energy aren't even equal to each other because if it's in mass, right, then even though it has a frequency to it and stuff, when it turns into energy, which you're trying to say is something different, it's not the same. It still doesn't equal each other. It's a false equality. Like a lot of us live in a false civility because we're trying to do something to where hey, how you doing? No, no, no. We're trying to do something without recognizing the differences. I love the differences in my wife. They cause me to think different. They cause me to speak different. They cause me to support things differently than I ever did. Who would have known? If you had known me when I was a child, who would have known that I would have been somebody who was concerned about making sure that they ate properly, depending on what my physical characteristics were and what my blood was doing, and what you know, and learning about having too much mucus and things like that, and developing melanin, and making sure that we all ate things that our bodies needed. Who would have known that I would have even cared about such things? I didn't even know the difference between juice and drink until like my mid 20s, probably later than that. And now my wife has me in a position to where I love making sure that I look for something that's natural. I love making sure that my grapes have seed in them. I love it. Didn't even care about this stuff before. Give me everything that's seedless. Praise Yah that he protected me because man. All the seedless stuff, of course, we have men that can't even produce seed anymore. All these brothers out here eating this tofu and everything, not realizing that you're getting too much estrogen or even fake estrogen levels up in you, and you can't act right anymore. And the more estrogen you have in these brothers, all these people that tell them to have is estrogen, the more aggressive they become. And then you try to get them to rest in the estrogen as if that's what they were been in. And then when they start doing what you tell them as far as the estrogen and eating the stuff that gives them the fake or real estrogen levels to spike, now all of a sudden they start getting aggressive. You call them call it toxic masculinity. Reality is that they should be more into their testosterone. The more testosterone they're into, the more at peace you'll find them. I'm at peace because of testosterone. I'm not toxic. You want to find a man that's going to be more at peace. Allow him to do things that keep his testosterone levels in order. You want to find sisters that are going to be more at peace. Allow her to be in a place to where her estrogen levels can be better, and that she has to deal with less testosterone. That's where the argumentative stuff comes from. You say, "Oh, she's argumentative, this and that." Have you ever considered what she eats? If she even eats correctly, she's going through endometriosis where she's having more than one egg come out of her, whatever. Of course, her periods are going to be out of control. She's not even eating right. Yeah, and then of course spiritually who our father is, that dictates a lot too. You said they don't want us to have it because we will leave them in the cold. Mm, well, you can say it better than I can right now if you get my drift, big bruh. Appreciate you. Right? But they don't want to deal with the roots. If you deal with if you're gonna talk about the way the reason why the fruit is rotten, we got to talk about them rotten roots. Everything that's not planted by our father, by our culture, by our source, by our kingdom, by our origin, is supposed to be plucked up by the root. Yeah, my wife said endometriosis is horrific, bleeding from tissues all over the body, scarring the insides. Yeah, I usually thank you for correcting that because I usually only focus on it being multiple eggs. But yeah, you bleed from all over the body. Your body is jacked up when you're dealing with endometriosis. It's not just even just the eggs. Well, the whole thing about this is talking about once again when people say go back to Africa, go back here. I say I'm already back. I'm back in the mind, the spirit. I've been back physically as well to places, but I'm just saying I'm already back. And when you go to these places, you'll learn a lot more about yourself. Once again, when you learn more about yourself, you're at peace and you realize you don't really need, other cultures like that. We're so busy telling each other, I don't need no man, I don't need no woman, blah, blah. You don't need other cultures like that. Set yourself up with a culture. See what your culture said about respecting women. People talking about all this stuff. Oh, can you believe that a black woman got married? Like Queen Catherine was already in England, generations ago, right? Queen Catherine was married to King George. You're talking about 1776 when the battle went on. You got to go back, 200 plus years where you already had an African woman who sat on the throne. And her children became children that married into all the other European big nations. Learn more about yourself, and then you'll be like, why are we making such a big deal about the first black anything? The first black person to do brain surgery was being done in Kemet. Well, we're so glad that this person won an award for chemistry, and we're teaching our children chemistry. We need black people to be involved in chemistry. We were doing chemistry since before it was called chemistry. It was called chemetry, the mind of Kemet. You had to study the mind of Kemet to be able to comprehend chemistry. We have pregnancy tests. Can you believe that? See, nobody had pregnancy tests. No, no, no. Stop talking about the West and acting like the West was the same thing as what we were doing. Because in Kemet, thousands of years ago, if a sister was pregnant, or if you wanted to find out if a sister was pregnant, not only could you find out she was pregnant, you can find out she was having a boy or girl pre-ultrasound. You know what they did? They basically planted some seeds in the ground, and then they had her urinate on both set of seeds, then they would basically like come and find out, and they would see if one seed was there. Not only if one of them changed a certain color, like ground changed a certain color, they would know, oh, okay, not only are you pregnant, but you're pregnant with a child, and this is or you're pregnant with a child, but this is what the child's going to be, male or female. Like, why are we the only reason you think that this is something that you need to celebrate now is because you don't even think of this as something that's a normalcy for you. What other people call miracles are what you do every day. Dr. Lay Africa said that, right? Emancipation ourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Marcus Garvey told me that. I've drank and supped with others who had had white skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes. But when he said he was white, he didn't mean that he was over you, right? He meant that he was just talking about a set of something that was a part of characteristics that he had to be able to describe himself. He said, but when he's white in America, he means boss. So therefore, that white people can help us, but they can't join us. Before there can be black-white unity, there must first be black unity. We can't be one with others if we can't be one within ourselves. Malcolm X taught me that. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he taught me, he said it's a strange thing to tell a man to pull himself up by his bootstraps if he doesn't have any boots. He also said that it's very terrible rhetoric to be able to tell people that to say that it was just great white Protestant work ethics that built the country when the country was built upon the backs of slaves and the Negro. Emancipate yourself. And really, it's not going to be ourselves. If you believe what I believe, the Most High is going to be who's going to help us to return to self. And therefore, the hearts of the fathers can return to the children, and the hearts of the children can return to their fathers. That being said, though, thank y'all. I appreciate it. Time is late. I actually still got like call slash test slash a bunch of stuff to do. So I'm going to go ahead and take my leave from you. But I appreciate y'all. Thank you for listening. Even if you disagree, we appreciate you. We'll be back on this channel. Remember, they're still trying to say that we can't be on Kofi_43 until Sunday or Monday, probably Monday. So until then, we'll be using this channel for both our evening and our evening sessions and our rising sessions. I will not be on tomorrow. Tomorrow's my day off. So I'll be getting stuff done around with the family. But Minister Shante will be on. We're still trying to figure out the free conference call thing. But just look for your Google Calendar invite. There may or may not be changes. I got to figure out what's going on with it. But she'll be giving us a word and a message tomorrow. So we thank you. We appreciate you. Yeah, exactly. Censorship is real. And yesterday we didn't say anything about H2N or anything. Somebody said that we were bullying, harassing, and TikTok did what they do, which is, hey, we're going to try and get you out of here. So I appreciate the moderators, and I thank you guys so much for what you do. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Please check out my wife, as always, the Honorable Maya, on TikTok, YouTube, or website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And thank you guys for being on. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you guys, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Hopefully everything will be better with Zoom. So we'll be able to resume our SOC workout. And if I don't see you for either one of those, we will definitely see you on Thursday, 8 a.m. Eastern New York time, right in the same place. And we appreciate you. Check out the podcast and everything. We've been posting those. Check out YouTube. Check out Patreon. We might even have some Patreon stuff that kind of comes out of nowhere tomorrow. And might even start doing some watch parties. We were talking about possibly we might just start watching some of the H2N stuff we've been talking about together. So if y'all want to join us for that, let us know. Especially if your Patreon will do that already. We might even do a little bit of that on Zoom. Maybe our SOC meeting this Saturday. Maybe we can do that on Zoom. Just come together and we can just sit down and watch maybe the first chapter together. And those who want to watch chapters or the first, that's not for H2N, but for Reclaiming the Throne. We can watch episode 1 together. And then those who want to watch episode 2 and 3, we'll watch that, together, I guess, on Patreon. Right. But we appreciate you. We look forward to talking to you guys very soon. And as always, this has been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voices and speaking the unspoken. And until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again, please remember, as always, just now that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, family. I'm not even sure. Is it Shabbat Shalom on the actual calendar? Might be. Either way, shalom. Be at peace. Have a great night. Thank you again. Talk to y'all later. Peace.